Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into a major event, something that significantly shifted things in South Asia back in May 2025. We're talking about Operation Sindoor.
That's right. We've been looking through all the material you've shared, the reports, the analyses, trying to, piece together what really happened.
Exactly. We want to pull out the key insights, maybe some unexpected details, and just get a clearer picture of India's military response. Think of this as our collective effort to understand the operation's story.
And it's a story that really starts not with the military action itself, but with a terrible tragedy. To understand Operation Sindoor, you have to understand the trigger.
Let's start there then. The catalyst, the absolute spark for all this, was a horrific terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah, specifically in Bizaran, near Pahalgam. It's often called mini Switzerland. Beautiful place, usually very peaceful.
Usually, but not on April 22nd, 2025.
No. That day, militants attacked civilians. The final count was 26 dead, 25 were Indian citizens, and one was Nepali. Just devastating.
And there was that chilling detail in the accounts about how the attackers operated.
Right. The reports mentioned they separated the men from the women before opening fire. And this detail, this act of leaving women as widows, connects directly, tragically, to the operation's name.
Sindoor, the mark worn by married Hindu women. It's quite a symbolic name.
It really is a very deliberate, very painful connection. And India's reaction, their accusation, was immediate.
Pointing fingers directly at Pakistan-based groups.
Yes. Specifically, Lashkar-e-Taiba, or LET,
Yeah.
Jaish-e-Mohammed, JEM, and Hizbul Mujahideen, HM. Those were the names coming up consistently.
And Pakistan's response.
A swift denial, complete denial of any involvement.
But back in India, the public mood.
It was intense, widespread outrage, people taking to the streets, demanding justice, demanding action. That Pahalgam tragedy wasn't just another incident. It became the clear, undeniable trigger for what came next.
Which was Operation Sindoor.
Exactly. India's military answer, named with that direct link back to the Pahalgam attack.
And one of the things that jumps out is the timing, the duration of this operation.
It's remarkable, really. It kicked off at 1:04 a.m. on May 7th, 2025, and it was all over in just 26 minutes.
26 minutes? That's incredibly fast for a multi-target strike.
Extremely focused. The targets weren't random. They were 9 specific sites described as terrorist infrastructure. These were spread across Pakistan itself, and also in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, or PoK.
And the emphasis was on these being terror camps, right? Not official military installations.
Precisely. That distinction was heavily emphasized in the material we looked at. Terror camps, training facilities, command posts linked to the groups blamed for Pahalgam.
And it involved multiple branches of the Indian military.
Yes. Army, Navy, and the Air Force played a key role. We saw specific mentions of Rafale jets being used.
Armed with some serious hardware. Scalpy cruise missiles, Hammer precision bombs.
Right. That suggests, a capability for standoff attacks with high precision, Scalp for longer ranges, hitting possibly hardened targets, and Hammer for pinpoint accuracy. The idea was clearly to hit these specific structures linked to LET-2, GEM, and HM, and minimize anything else.
We saw quite a list of the actual locations targeted. It gives you a sense of the scope.
It really does. It wasn't just one area. You had Markaz Subhanallah in Bahawalpur, a gem place. Then Markaz Taiba in Muridike, which is significant, described as a major LET-T center, maybe even where Ajmal Kasab trained for the Mumbai attacks.
Wow.
Then places like Sarjal, Tara Kalan for GEM, Memuna Joya in Silkot, linked to Hizbul Mujahideen, Markaz Ali Hadith in Barnala for LET-T.
And targets inside PoK as well?
Yes, several. Markaz Abbas in Kotli, seen as a GEM outpost. Maskara Hil Shahid, also Kotli, a Hizbul location. And then 2 in Muzaffarabad Shawainal camp for LET-T and Siena Balel camp for GEM. So a pretty wide net targeting key nodes.
What about the reported outcome? Sectors at these sites.
The Indian figures reported around 100 terrorists killed. And they named some specific individuals, like Mohammed Hassan Khan, said to be the son of a GEM commander in PoK, and an LET-T operative named Abu Akasha involved in logistics and planning attacks.
And India provided proof.
They released satellite images later. The Indian Army stated these showed the damage to the camps, presenting it as evidence of the strike success.
So the strikes themselves were incredibly quick. What happened immediately after? What was the scene like in Pakistan and PoK?
Well, there was definitely activity. Reports of rescue crews at places like Muridike. Damage was visible, including reportedly to a mosque in Muzaffarabad, which became a focal point in some coverage.
And the casualty figures reported by each side were Very different.
Hugely different, a major point of contention. Pakistan reported at least 31 civilians killed and 46 injured. India insisted very firmly that no civilians were harmed. They maintained the strikes were surgical, hitting only the intended terror targets.
There was mention of an Indian colonel presenting video evidence.
Yes, Colonel Sophia Qureshi. India presented video evidence they claimed backed up their assertion of 0 civilian deaths. So, two completely opposing narratives on civilian impact.
And Pakistan's official reaction was strong.
Oh, absolutely. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif called it an act of war, vowed Pakistan would respond. Their defense minister, Khawaja Asif, even went on CNN claiming they'd shot down 5 Indian jets, including Rafales.
But there was a question about evidence for that claim.
Right. The reports we saw indicated that when pressed, no evidence was provided for the shootdowns. India, meanwhile, pretty much dismissed these claims. Air Marshal A.K. Bharti made comments about combat losses in general terms, but didn't confirm any Indian losses in this specific operation. It was a real information battle alongside everything else.
Beyond the immediate back and forth, India seemed quite active on the diplomatic front, too.
Very much so. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval was reportedly briefing his counterparts very quickly in the US, UK, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Russia, getting India's narrative out there.
And how did the world react? It seemed quite mixed.
It was varied, definitely. You had Israel expressing very strong support. Their ambassador basically said terrorists can't hide. But others, like the US under President Trump at the time and the UAE, were calling for calm, for de-escalation.
The UK offered to mediate, I recall.
Yes, they did, in China. Their reaction was described as calling it regrettable, but there was also analysis suggesting they might view it, well, pragmatically, as an intelligence gathering opportunity given their regional presence.
The UN Security Council got involved, too.
It did. Pakistan brought it up, claiming a violation of sovereignty. India countered, with Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri pointing to the resistance force, TRF, claiming responsibility for the Pahalgam attack, linking India's action back to cross-border terrorism.
So overall, what was the general international feeling?
It seems key players like the US, UK, France largely acknowledged India's right to self-defense against terror. The underlying message often seemed to be pressure on Pakistan to deal with the groups operating on its soil.
Let's focus on PoK for a moment. Pakistan occupied Kashmir. It's always been a complex area claimed by India, run by Pakistan, often with local frustrations towards Islamabad bubbling up. How do these strikes hit there?
Well, hitting targets inside PoK, like in Kotli and Muzaffarabad, definitely sent a clear signal about India's reach, its capability to strike deep into territory Pakistan controls. That likely created a sense of vulnerability.
But then there was that unexpected twist mentioned in the material about local sentiment.
This is really fascinating and maybe counterintuitive. Despite known frustrations with Pakistani rule, some reports suggested a shift towards Pakistan among some locals after the Indian strikes.
How does that work?
The thinking seems to be a kind of rally around the flag effect. Facing an external strike, even if aimed at militants, might create a sense of shared threat, temporarily overriding other grievances against the administering power, Pakistan in this case. We saw reports of locals holding funeral prayers for those killed in the PoK strikes. It's complex.
And Pakistan's military probably reinforced that narrative.
Seems likely. Reports mentioned an increased Pakistani military presence in PoK afterwards, guarding damaged sites like that mosque in Meridke. This fits a narrative of Pakistan protecting the locals from India.
But is this shift likely permanent?
The analysis we saw suggests probably not. It might be a temporary reaction to the immediate event. Those underlying frustrations with governance in PoK are deep-seated. It's definitely something that needs watching over time.
Looking at India's strategy now, Operation Sindoor feels like more than just a one-off retaliation. It feels like a new approach, almost.
I think that's fair to say. The core message seems to be sponsoring terrorism now comes with a much higher, much more direct cost, and India is willing and able to exact it.
How does it stack up against earlier responses like Uri in 2016 or Balakot in 2019?
The key differences highlighted are depth and capability. These strikes reportedly went much deeper into Pakistan, up to 100 kilometers was mentioned. Using long-range weapons like Scalp-E from Rafales shows an enhanced ability to hit targets far beyond the Lasi, potentially changing Pakistan's calculus about where they might be vulnerable. It's an evolution from previous actions.
And India didn't just rely on military force, did they? The Indus Waters Treaty came up.
Yes, that was a significant move. Putting the treaty on hold with the line, blood and water cannot flow together, that adds a powerful non-military pressure point. It hits at a fundamental resource issue, adding another layer of strategic coercion.
Did the operation have a noticeable impact on Pakistan's military itself?
The report suggests so. There was talk of losses for Pakistan and clashes along the line of control around that time, and claims that Indian actions effectively neutralized air defenses near Lahore and Karachi during the operation, plus reports of damage at air bases like Jacobabad and Sargodha. It suggests the impact went beyond just the specific terror camps.
Pakistan tried to hit back, though.
They did attempt retaliation. Sources mention drones, missiles, fighter jets targeting some 26 locations in India, but India claimed its defenses held strong, thwarting most attempts with minimal damage and, crucially, no reported Indian casualties from these counterstrikes. Figures like Colonel Sophia Qureshi and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh were presented as embodying India's defensive readiness.
And back home in India, what was the mood?
Overwhelmingly supportive, based on the accounts. Real political unity, widespread public backing for the military action. We saw reports of leaders across the political spectrum, Rahul Gandhi, Yogi Adityanath, Arvind Kejriwal, all expressing support using patriotic language, a strong sense of national resolve.
This support translated into visible security measures, too.
Absolutely. High alert across hundreds of districts, 244 was the number mentioned. Things like air raid drills, blackout exercises, border ceremonies like the Wagah retreat were suspended for the public. Schools closed in border areas. Airports faced disruptions. Students were moved from border zones. Even government employee leave was canceled in places like Rajasthan on the chief minister's orders. A real wartime footing, almost.
We also saw that slightly bizarre side story involving a trademark attempt.
Ah, yes, the Reliance Industries thing. A junior employee apparently tried to trademark Operation Sindoor. The company quickly backtracked, called it inadvertent, and said the phrase was now, part of the national consciousness. A small detail, but it shows how quickly the operation captured public attention.
So let's pull back for the bigger picture. What's the main takeaway from Operation Sindoor? Has it created a new reality?
It certainly seems to have shifted the strategic dynamic. The message to Pakistan about the costs of terrorism appears much starker now. India demonstrated a new level of capability and resolve.
But that situation in PoK remains really complicated.
Definitely. That mix of fear of India's reach and that potentially temporary rallying effect towards Pakistan makes it a very volatile situation to watch.
And even though there were reports of a U.S. brokered ceasefire eventually, the underlying tensions haven't just vanished.
No, not at all. The situation remains tense. And Pakistan's narrative of being the victim of aggression faces challenges internationally, given the links back to the terror groups and the Pahalgam attack.
The world is definitely keeping a close eye on this.
For sure. India has clearly signaled a change in its strategic posture regarding cross-border threats.
So after diving into all this, the tragedy, the swift response, the global reactions, the complexities on the ground, what do you think is the biggest long-term impact of Operation Sindoor? Is this new approach sustainable for India? And maybe most intriguingly, where does that local sentiment in PoK go from here?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? The consequences of May 2025 will likely continue to unfold for years. It's certainly given everyone a lot to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, navigating through such a complex and significant event.